Well, it's sort of interesting in a way because when I share this with people, they are surprised because it really didn't start out where it is right now. It didn't start out to be, for what I gather, an opportunity to encourage teachers to experiment, to get more familiar with the literature, to bring new ideas to the classroom. And it's wonderful that it is there, but it started out, quite frankly, in the 80s when there were tax protests going on all over the country. And in California in particular, these Proposition 13, and there were a number of different propositions that got passed that essentially froze school resources. And so many school districts out there were forming foundations to pick up the slack because, you know, it's nice to say you can get by with the same amount of money, but that doesn't take care of the power, the light bill, you know, it all goes up. Yeah. So to make a long story short, we got involved in it essentially to prepare for, if it was ever going to occur, having a foundation, a fund that we could call on periodically if we needed it. That's probably one of the reasons I thought about this, that it really did take off very quickly. I mean, if you think about it, when you go out and talk to people about why we're doing this, and we're sort of saying we're afraid of taxes. I mean, it's just one of those issues that, quite frankly, it's tough to win in a conversation. So our efforts to get something going stalled for, I would guess maybe a couple of years. But we did raise a little money. And I racked my brain about this. I don't know which board member it was. It might have been Margaret Larson is one I come closest to. She said, well, as long as we have these funds, couldn't we take part of them and encourage, you know, it sort of moved it in a little different direction about supporting teachers to have ideas. The rest of the story. Yeah. It just took off from there. And of course, it was much easier to talk to people about funding something like that, particularly after they started to see what was happening. Yeah, I think, quite frankly, the literature that I took to the board suggested that right off the bat. You don't want this to be part of the school board budget. It should be a separate fund governed by a separate board and so forth. At least that's the way they were setting them up in California and the like. But there were two board members, primarily Charlie Miller, who played a major role in getting this thing going, and Margaret Larson, who just really, they took it on, and as some superintendents would say, they just wouldn't let go. They kept pushing and pushing, and I'm glad they did. Yeah. A couple, 3 years, it was obvious several things. One, we were not California. I mean, the initiative process they have out there can get some pretty wild things started. And two, Wisconsin has a long tradition of supporting public education. I know it goes up and down, and politically it can be a game, but by and large, there's good support. So it didn't become a reality or even close to a reality, and yet we had collected some funds. There's another name, by the way, Jean Kitts, very involved in this. She was not on the school board, but she's a citizen who, until she came aboard the foundation board, we didn't have much cash, yeah. But she went out and raised a lot. The major change was one I just referenced briefly. It was the movement towards saying to teachers, we have funds to assist you in exploring or implementing or whatever, any new ideas you might have in terms of how, particularly how they would improve student achievement at all levels or any level. That shift was was really dramatic. I mean, because I'm not kidding when I say we never started there. It was something like, wow. And then when you saw what happened, when board members saw, and I think when administrators began to see the bang for the buck, I mean, I hate to say this, but quite often, teachers are not asking for a lot. You know, you give them $500 and you think they won the lottery. Yeah. They just really, so the investment was small and the bang was really big.
Yeah.
But when I saw what started to happen when we changed the shift, we shifted over towards student achievement and recognizing teachers. I mean, that was a major part of this thing too. I mean, that's powerful when their peers or somebody, whether it's the school board or the superintendent or someone says to them, you know, that's a great idea. It's so great, in fact, here's a check for you to, I mean, that goes a ways. And that validation, I think, over time, and I was there long enough to see it, it began to develop a culture of, and I got to be careful using this term, but I do mean it, a culture of risk-taking. That maybe there are some other ways and better ways of doing what I'm trying to do here. And so I'm going to step out and look. I mean, that's powerful as well. So it's hard to pin down the impact this thing has had on the potential for children in this school district. It's hard to pin down. Well, yeah, I've had that wonderful opportunity to deliver awards. The first thing for me, of course, is that it was tough for me to realize I didn't know anybody in the schools. I've been gone just long enough where there have been retirements, and so I have to look hard to find teachers that I worked with. But that's just sort of a side. The real thrill is to implement what I just said. You can see it in that teacher. Almost every one of the teachers involves kids somehow in the receiving of this whole thing, and it's a spirit of we're going to do something different. Just watch us. I mean, it's you don't see that in public education a lot, unfortunately. I really don't think you do. Yeah. Well, just the title of it, I guess, maybe is speaks volumes. I didn't look at the title of it. I had to check, and so I got outside Logan and I parked the car and started looking all this stuff over. And I said, "My goodness, what is this?" He's asking for money to buy the supplies. I mean, they were going to design the project and all that kind of stuff, but they needed wood and I don't know what else they needed to build a portable, solar-powered desalinization plant. And I was stunned for a moment, just thinking to myself, where am I? This is not the school system that I used to be the head of. This is a little different place here. That these young people, and there are boys and girls in that class, I think it was sophomores and juniors, I don't know for sure, who were, I asked one of the kids to explain to me what they're going to do, didn't miss a heartbeat. I mean, so it's that part of it as well. I mean, it does notch everything up, I think, a bit. And it encourages teachers to do that. Because it not only makes it legitimate, it sort of says, we want you to do this. We'll reward you for doing this. It's much larger than I ever thought it would be. I mean, I every year when I go to the awards conferences and find out what kind of investment we're making that particular year, it's I can recall any number of years we never had that much in the bank, not alone available as interest to invest in a project. So it's a lot larger, and I think for a good reason. I think people see the value more and more than when I talk to them about this changing the culture and getting teachers to feel comfortable stepping outside and trying something different. When I talk to I still hang around with some old superintendents, they know what I'm talking about. They think that that's very unusual and something that we ought to make sure we keep going. So it's evolved in a beautiful way as far as I'm concerned. In addition to the academic stimulation that comes with all this, there's another part of it that I'm terribly impressed with, and I have no idea who to give credit for this. But somewhere along the line, someone recognized the fact that children today are coming to school probably as needy as they've ever been, particularly in certain parts of the community. And they created, or the foundation created, this random acts of kindness, which essentially provides a building principle, I believe, the flexibility. If there's a situation where a child doesn't have a code, or they're just, I don't want to even get into the potential issues that kids have to deal with today. But they have, the point is the principal's got some resources to call on. And I don't believe they got to go get it approved by anybody. They just do it, which is really beautiful. It's hard for me to say do anything different. I really think they're on the right track. There are issues that, if you wanted to, you could say, well, I really think they should concentrate on critical thinking, or sorting out the media, or all these things that, quite frankly, most of us are very concerned about. But in many ways, that's a school district proposition. And I think we're still operating on the grounds that the ideas for what we ought to be doing bubble up. There may be some trickle down in terms of resources, but it's the teachers who get the idea and come and say, this is something we want to try. And that just, I think that loads it for success, because they're really invested in it. So I think we're on the right track, and I'm just really, really impressed every year what I see happening. It's really just been a wonderful surprise, and I still think an underestimated phenomenon. I think there are more things happening, long-lasting things happening, particularly this culture of, let's see if we can't improve things by doing something different. That's priceless, that's all.